Good evening. My name is Dan Botz. I'm the candidate of the Socialist Party for the U.S. Senate. In our country today, it's absolutely right what the previous speaker said and what the next speaker will say. That is that jobs is the most important issue. We have an unemployment rate of 10% officially, just about 9.5, about 20% in reality with discouraged workers and people who are underemployed. In the African American and Latino communities, it's more like 40%. Among youth, it's as high as 50%. So we're talking about an enormous question of jobs and of unemployment. The program, both of the candidates have called to different degrees for tax cuts to deal with the jobs problem. Tax cuts, if you take wealthy people and you cut their taxes, if you take businesses and you cut their taxes, you have no guarantee that any of that money is coming back here for jobs. Those wealthy people can use it to go buy boats, they can buy homes, they can decide to invest in China, they can send their money anywhere they want. And what this is another tax break for the wealthy. In this country, between 1945 and 1965, the wealthiest tax bracket was taxed at a rate of 80%. The wealthiest tax bracket gave back 80% of their income to the United States government. Since, in more recent years, under President Clinton, it was down to 39%, and under President Bush to 36%. And currently it's 36% under Obama. So we have a very low tax rate for that highest bracket. Those taxes ought to be increased. If you want to take care, it's absolutely right. You're going to leave here, and many of you are unfortunately not going to find jobs. Many of you are people who are looking for jobs in education, psychology, social work. You come out of, you work in the services. Some of you are in the arts. You're going out, you are in music. Those programs in music will be cut. The programs in social services will be cut because the economic crisis has caused a fiscal crisis in the state. Your jobs won't be there, unfortunately, for many of you. And something has to be done to change that. There has to be a movement built to change that. And what has to be done is to take money from the wealthy to create programs for jobs. We have this, I mentioned this crisis in employment. Neither of the candidates has a program to address this. There's a talk of increasing the stimulus program. Yes, I think that the original stimulus program, as economists like Paul Krugman have commented, was inadequate. We need an enormous stimulus program, but it's not enough. That is, in this state, we have idle factories. We have factories with very, very low levels of production. Those factories should be turned into places of work for people in Ohio who are out of work. How do you do that? The government comes in and finances them, says, we'll finance this factory, let the unions and workers and consumers in this community run that factory. That's a dramatic idea. You haven't heard somebody say that. But I have every confidence that working people in this country are smart enough. I mean, I've worked a lot of places. I've been a steel worker, I've been a truck driver, I've worked in universities, I've been a social worker for a year, as some of you study here. I've had a wide variety of jobs in different industries, and I can tell you that very often the jobs are done better when the boss isn't there. People who work will tell you that, they know that. That working people know how to do the job, and they could do that. We need to take over those idle factories and set them to work and put people to work producing for a green economy. On the environment, I challenge these people to talk about ending the use of coal. We have to stop burning coal. There's no such thing as clean coal. We have to stop the mountaintop removal that's taking away entire mountains to get the coal. And how do you do that? You say that we're going to create a green energy program. The government comes in and finances that. Take over these auto plants that have been shut down. You know, axle plants would be great plants to make wind turbines in. That's what they're very similar to what they do. Let the government come in and finance it. I'm not talking about the state taking over though. I'm talking about you taking over. I have faith that you're smart enough and you have the intelligence, you will have the experience as you get older to run these plants. Not have them run by the great corporations. These great corporations determine everything that happens in our society. I think of think of that BP spill. Have you seen anybody go to jail for that? Have you seen anybody go to jail for killing 10 people on a platform? 10 people killed on that platform, the Gulf polluted, and nobody goes to jail. How come? The corporations run this country. The corporations determine our energy policy. They determine our foreign policy. Why are we at war in Iraq and Afghanistan and so on? We're at war because of the desire of U.S. corporations to control oil, to control mineral resources, to control the world market. And so the corporations also push us to war in those countries. We have to change this country from one dominated by big corporations, from a nation dominated by the corporations, to one that's run by the American people. But it's hard to do when the Republicans and Democrats are both parties that represent the corporations. I think you can see that in the continuity of the Bush and Obama policies. Bush started to save the banks, Obama came in and continued to give the money to the banks, and yet the foreclosure crisis continues, and it's going to continue, and there's no stopping it. There's the same kind of continuity on environmental policy. Remember, it was Obama who said, it would be a great idea, let's drill all up and down the East Coast and in the Gulf. Continuity of policy there. In the foreign policy, Bush and Obama have both been involved in these wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's now Obama's war, as Time magazine said, it's Obama's war. And what's happening? Do you realize that the United States is believed by some epidemiologists to have done a study of the deaths there, to have killed 1 million people in Iraq? Some people say 100,000 to 1 million. I think the 1 million is closer to reality. That's on the hands of our nation. 1 million men, women, and children killed in Iraq. 1 million people killed. Can you imagine what that is? Wiping out the equivalent of an entire city here. We need to be out of those countries. These candidates whose representatives are here will not talk about getting out now. Bring every single troop home now. We're leaving an occupying army of 50,000 people in Iraq. You know what that's doing? That's breeding anti-Americanism. It's creating terrorists. It's making people hate us. We're bombing Pakistan right now. I had a woman stand up in Cleveland in the back of the room. She said, you know, right now, it's hard for me to tell people your president is bombing my country and killing men, women, and children in my country. President Obama is bombing Pakistan. Drone missiles are going into Pakistan and they're killing innocent people there. That shouldn't happen. If we end those wars, we can bring trillions of dollars home to the United States so you can have jobs. If we tax the rich, you can have jobs. If we change these policies, it would be possible. But the Republicans and Democrats can't tackle these things because they are creatures of corporations. They ultimately represent the interests of those corporations, both of them. So I think that what we have to talk about is building a different kind of society. We have to put out a poll, something that says we believe in humanity. We're for human rights. We have a humanistic outlook. We talk about rights here. We have to talk about defending African American rights, Latino rights. We have to stop the attacks on Muslims in our society. We have to stop the attacks on gays. This is all scapegoating to attack gays and lesbians and Latino immigrants. It's scapegoating. Who's doing it? It's the right wing, it's the Tea Party movement, the right wing of the Republican Party, and people in the Democratic Party capitulate to it and go along with it. Lee Fisher's got a great program. It's not a bad program. I wouldn't criticize it. What can he do about it, though? The president doesn't support it. They didn't go in and fight for the EFCA, the Employee Free Choice Act. They didn't get that. They didn't get immigration reform. None of these things are happening. And Fisher couldn't do them. He doesn't really have a reputation as a great fighter. He's been more ascending the ladder of the Democratic Party. But if he were a great fighter in that party, he couldn't do it. You cannot do it without a movement. We have to build a movement. The reason our country's in the position it is because too many of us are spending too much time in rooms like these. We have to build a movement in the streets. That's how we ended the war in Vietnam. I'm very proud to have been part of the movement that in the 1960s ended the war in Vietnam. It did not happen because of politicians you elected. It happened because millions of people went in the street and said, we will not continue to drop napalm on children in Vietnam. We have to say today, we will not continue to drop bombs on people in Pakistan, Afghanistan, in Iraq. We have to build a social movement. That's what I stand for as a socialist candidate. I can't believe my time isn't running out, though I talk fast.
1 minute.
1 minute, okay. So in the last minute, I think that I want to say that there's two things that I'm concerned about. One is to see you in a movement. You have to be out here. When you see someone here who's an LGBT student who comes under attack, we have to stand to defend that person. When you see a Latino immigrant and they're called an illegal, which is just a way of dehumanizing them, you have to say, wait a second, that's a person, let's talk about their rights. When you see African American or Latino students who still in this day and age suffer discrimination, you have to stand up for that person. When you see women's rights denied, including the right to choose, which was just denied here by the Republican candidate, deny women the right to abortion. I'll tell you, contraception doesn't always work. Everyone may have that moment when they have to turn to abortion, every woman, and that should be a woman's right to choose. And I find it an assault on the dignity of women and an assault on human rights to deny that. So we have to build a movement in this society that creates, once again, a great social movement, a humanistic movement that stands for jobs and freedom and justice for everyone.